All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Looks like we are getting folks in from the waiting room. Looks like everybody's starting to filter in and join us. We are recording this meeting, so folks need to go back and want to take a look at it for any references. We will record this and then post it back out in the next day or two, just once we get everything processed out. But just want to welcome everybody to this virtual information session. We have filed our first of a maintenance text amendment, which we'll get into kind of explaining what this new rhythm and cadence of text amendments that we're going to be taking on for the UDO side of activities here at the city will be looking like moving forward. This is petition 2025-047. And again, as a maintenance amendment, this is going to include both technical things and administrative things we used to call cleanups, and some more policy or broad-based kind of changes to the actual text of the UDO. And again, we'll jump into that as the rest of the team here starts to explain what's in here and just some of the highlights and overview of everything. So again, welcome to everybody who's joined us. Thank you for taking some time out of your day. And I will now turn it over to Kevin and the rest of the UDO team. We've got Mariah and Andrew and Faith on with us as well. So we'll be walking y'all through everything and look forward to conversation and questions towards the end. So thanks, everybody. And Kevin, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Again, thank you for joining us for this virtual information session for rezoning petition 2025-047, which, as Dave said, is one of our UDO maintenance text amendments. As he mentioned, I am Kevin May, one of the planning staffers working on this rezoning petition. And again, joined by my colleagues, Dave, who you've already heard from, Andrew, also Mariah Wozniak and Faith Zisk, as well as we've got some resources from other city departments such as CATS, Stormwater, Urban Forestry, and Zoning. We're here to provide an overview of this proposed text amendment, as well as offer some additional information and resources. Our agenda for our session today, we're going to go over some meeting logistics, touch briefly on the UDO background, and then we'll pivot to an overview of the text amendment and highlight some of the proposed changes in that text amendment. And then we'll snapshot out some other proposed changes, go over the text amendment schedule, point you towards some additional resources to look more into this text amendment should you have that desire, and then have some room for questions and discussion. So our meeting procedures for today, staff is going to give a presentation on the information in the proposed text amendment. If you'd be so kind, please use the Zoom chat feature to enter your questions or comments, and staff will respond to those questions as we can during the flow of the presentation or at the end when we have more time. So as I mentioned at the outset, the purpose of this session is to present information on our UDO text amendment petition 2025-047. That is what we're going to focus solely on today. We're here to receive your feedback and your comments and have a discussion about this rezoning petition and text amendment. If you do have questions on other elements of the UDO, though, you can always reach out to us, and you can send an email over to charlotteudo@charlottenc.gov, and we're happy to begin a conversation with you via that email address on any other UDO issues that you may want to have a discussion about. So just very briefly, as you're reviewing the documents for our text amendment, for those that don't know how you would read the text amendment, as you see the document, the text that appears with the red strike through is text that is proposed to be removed in the text amendment. You can see an example of that at the top right. New replacement text is shown with a red underline, which you can see at an example of at the bottom right. And then also, as an example, at the bottom right, sometimes there are entire sections that are new and replaced, and entire sections that are struck out. But in most cases, what you will find is there are just selected pieces or passages or words that are struck and or additional text added to the body of the text amendment. We're getting on in the UDO implementation now at this point. A little bit of background on the UDO. It's our Unified Development Ordinance. As most of you do know, it is the primary implementation tool for the adopted policies found in our Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan. The UDO was adopted by Charlotte City Council on August 22nd, 2022, and it became effective on June 1st, 2023. And as you may have heard, quite often we refer to it as a living document, which means it can be updated and revised through text amendments, such as the one that we're presenting information on today, to maintain its relevancy, clarify intent, address new concepts, uses, and best practices. And I believe with that, I'm going to turn it over and pivot to my colleague, Mariah Wozniak, who will give you an overview of this text amendment. Mariah?
Hi, thanks, Kevin. I just need to get my cursor working correctly really quickly, and I'm good to go. Thanks. As Kevin mentioned, my name is Mariah Wozniak, and I'm going to be walking through some slides about the specifics of the text amendment today. Excuse me. So as Kevin mentioned, this is a high-level overview of the latest text amendment filed on April 15th. And this is what we're considering as our first maintenance text amendment. So as many of you know, we've had several UDO text amendments since the ordinance was adopted, including cleanup and more topic-based. And now we're moving into a more regular maintenance text amendment approach, which means that we will file maintenance text amendments twice per year, and they could include technical and policy-related items. So the text amendment we're covering today, 2025-047, includes multiple items identified by community and staff that we'll cover in the coming slides. In addition to this session, we will also be hosting one next Tuesday, the 13th at 6 p.m. Both sessions, so this one and that one, cover the same material. So there's no need for you to attend that one unless you really feel called to do so. And then following these virtual sessions, the next major milestone for this text amendment is the public hearing on May 19th, which is during the City Council's zoning meeting. And then just a quick note about that. If you plan to speak during the public hearing, you must sign up with the city clerk by 1 p.m. On the day of the meeting or at the meeting prior to the agenda item. So let's jump into the contents of the text amendment. The first change to note is related to sites with multiple frontages. Staff identified a need for UDO adjustments to accommodate sites with multiple frontages as shown in the figure and images on this slide, which is the Harris Teeter located on Central, the Plaza, and Nandina Street as an example of a site with multiple frontages. The current UDO language makes it difficult for sites that have multiple frontages on different roads, particularly with different road classifications, to configure orientation for back of house operations, including placement for loading, deliveries, and parking. So we recognize that this scenario occurs not infrequently, so staff is proposing a new UDO language that allows for more flexibility for site design on these types of properties. This gives folks designing on sites with 3 or more frontages room to determine where back of house operations can locate and where they need to front the building itself. Our next highlight is related to research campuses. So staff identified the need to adjust our standards for research campuses in order to facilitate life science campuses in Charlotte. The proposed adjustments have been in the works for a while as we've worked with internal and external stakeholders to ensure that we have a solid tool to allow for life science campuses, which are good drivers for economic development and job creation. Through this particular change, staff is proposing a new use, so the research and development with light industrial, and a new term for life sciences, which locates under the existing definition for research and development, in order to attract and facilitate this type of facility that are locating in other parts of the Carolinas, including the Research Triangle to the west of us and even Greenville, South Carolina. So with the current language, folks have to piecemeal different standards to arrive at this sort of life science outcome, but in this new use, helps bring the pieces together for easier development and permitting. And ultimately, we think this is a great economic development opportunity to keep us competitive in the research campus market. Our next highlight is related to office and residential use conversions. So staff is proposing prescribed conditions to allow for adaptive reuse in an existing office use to a residential use. We know these types of conversions are a challenge from a building code standpoint and a zoning standpoint. So to help facilitate these conversions, we want to remove some of the zoning barrier. In the current UDO language, we don't allow residential uses in our office districts, but we propose that if you have an existing office building that is vacant, but you want to convert to a residential use, then the language in this text amendment removes some of the obstacles to do so. The building code and the permitting process will still apply, but this change helps with the initial entitlements barrier. And then in addition to that, properties currently zoned IC1, IC2, OFC, or CG that are located in an activity center place type. So a neighborhood center, a community activity center or a regional activity center may be converted or redeveloped as a multifamily attached or stacked residential development. So this recognizes this recognizes the fact that the office market is slowing some, and this additional allowance for residential in these districts with those place types could enhance the areas in the city we've identified for activity centers long term. So now we'll move into more of the technical or administrative side of the text amendment, highlighting some of the adjustments we've made to UDO standards for applicability. So the text amendment strikes accompanying appendices language related to North Carolina Fire Code to address new project review challenges. So this allows more clarity around which code applies when reviewers are looking at different plans. It modifies the applicability of frontages and introduces alternative standards for lots with 3 or more frontages, as we discussed on the earlier slide. It also updates applicability of landscape yard requirements in N1 districts, N2A, and N2B zoning districts, which we'll cover in the next slide. And it also clarifies the applicability of standards for green area, tree preservation, and heritage trees. Finally, it adjusts the applicability for post-construction stormwater regulations. So this slide will cover the adjustments to landscape yards, which include adding a landscape yard for residential development in the N1, N2A, and N2B zoning districts. So we realize that in some instances, residential development next to an older or existing use that required a buffer but didn't have one was a challenge. So we want to be sure that residential development has some screening and buffering. So the text amendment specifies the need to provide separation between residential and some other uses if that buffer does not already exist. In addition, we are proposing an adjustment to landscape yard requirements from an emphasis on place types to an emphasis on the abutting zoning districts when it comes to the N1 and N2 districts. So as currently written, the UDO standards for landscape yards are based on the abutting place type on the policy map, which can be a challenge because there might be a conflict between the existing use or the existing zoning district on the ground and what's on the policy map. So this amendment takes us back to a zoning district standard for adjusting landscape yards based on zoning district, and it makes it a little more clear for places where a business exists, but maybe isn't an N1 place type, but has been operational for years. And staff sees the value in making sure you're buffering to that use instead of the future place type. So just again, making sure the buffering is based on the zoning district and more is more of the standard of how we've done it in the past. And this seems to work better for some of the preferable outcomes over the years. The text amendment also includes updates to a few zoning district standards, particularly corrugated metal as a building material. So we've heard from some folks in the industry that corrugated metal has come a long way. So we've identified certain zoning districts, facades, and places where this is a useful tool as long as it meets requirements. Some of the examples are shown here, and we think it's a reasonable design outcome. We also adjusted some language about pedestrian entry locations for multifamily, as well as back of curb clarification if a project requires installation of a curb. This makes it a little bit clearer for ordinance users to understand. The text amendment also includes proposed adjustments to a few general development standards. We propose simplified language for accessory structures like sheds and accessory dwelling units or ADUs. We've clarified and simplified setbacks to encourage the use of accessory structures and make it easier to move these types of projects forward. Just want to note that the text amendment eliminates the differential condition for accessory structures less than 24 feet in height, but taller than the principal structure. It also includes some updated parking standards related to parking area locations for non-residential uses, ratio adjustments for financial institutions and retail goods establishments, and it clarifies maximum driveway width between curb and sidewalk when no sidewalk is present. There's also a pole sign standard adjustment as well included in this text amendment. That includes the content portion of the presentation. Our next steps in the schedule for this text amendment include the public hearing on May 19th, as mentioned previously. And after the public hearing, we may file additional changes to be included in the text amendment if needed, stemming from these engagement sessions, the public hearing, or potential revisions identified by staff. And then after that, we have a zoning committee recommendation on June 3rd and hopefully a city council adoption set for June 16th. The red line text amendment in its entirety is available online at charlotteudo.org. And we recognize this is a lot of information and the text amendment can be quite an undertaking to digest. So staff has prepared a companion document, which is also located on our website, that can help you further understand all the contents of this text amendment. This is something new we're trying to help supplement. So we encourage you to utilize the resource as a way to really dig in. And with that, we have some time for questions and discussion.
Thanks, Mariah. It looks like we did get a question over from a participant. It says, can you go over the change in the ADU height and what is being proposed to be allowed? Kevin, I don't know if you want to jump in and try to clarify that.
Yeah, sure, Dave. Thanks.
Mm.
What I will say is I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a change strictly to the height of ADUs. We've heard people have come to the city wanting to do an ADU, and because of the way that the current setback language in the UDO with regard to accessory structures is written, it can sometimes be a challenge, especially to locate an accessory dwelling unit in an accessory structure that already exists, because there's language that says if you've got an accessory structure that is less than 24 feet but taller than a principal structure. So you think if you've got a one-story ranch house and maybe you've got a detached garage, but you want to locate an accessory dwelling unit on a second floor of that detached garage, that you would have to come in and step off the rear property line 15 feet. And that became a challenge to try to get ADUs into our community with greater utilization. And so what we're trying to do is just eliminate that differential condition, and it won't necessarily impact the overall height of an ADU, but just ease and mitigate the setback condition to be able to utilize perhaps detached accessory structures in that condition I was talking about, where you might be able to locate one on the second story of a garage and not have to worry so much about setbacks.
Thank you. And if that needs some additional clarification, please feel free to ask for some of that further in the chat. It looks like we had a request to include bookmarks on the PDF download of the UDO. Is that something that is achievable, or is I'm not sure how the PDF is set up once you download it?
I'm not sure we can get there in time for the public hearing, to be quite candid, but we can try. We can try if we file an amended text amendment to get bookmarks in that amended copy.
Okay. Then looks like we've got a question. Do the ADU roof overhangs have to be within the setbacks?
I think we've got some zoning folks on here, and I don't want to speak out of turn. So I think I've seen John Kinley or maybe another zoning staffer. I have an idea what the answer is, but I don't want to be incorrect. Is there somebody that can help me with that?
Hey, it's John. I'm pretty sure the setbacks are measured from the eaves of the roof, as I recall.
Thanks, John.
How will, another question we had is how will the changes to ADUs relate to HDC standards?
I'm not sure that there'll be much impact with regard to Historic District Commission standards. It would, even if you wanted to, with the ADU changes in this text amendment, construct or utilize an ADU, we would still have to go through that same HDC process to be sure that you're meeting whatever standards that they have to be able to do that ADU in those districts.
So that the HDC would still essentially supersede in some regard the
Correct.
standards for
Yep.
an ADU. Yeah, perfect. Additional questions? Anyone else have any items to discuss or clarification? There's, like I said, some things in there that are a little more policy based with the multiple frontages, office conversions, research campus, which are all things that went through some of the normal process with input from our UDO advisory committee. And then the technical items went through lots of internal and external conversations with both staff and folks that work with this document on a regular basis. So I feel like we're in good shape and incorporate a lot of that feedback. We did get another question that says, didn't hear what the changes are that help accommodate back of house on sites with multiple frontages. So we can go back to that slide. So essentially yeah, and Kevin, I don't know if you want to explain it in the actual details of how the hierarchy of frontages is determined, but the general concept is ensuring that currently, as it's written, all the frontages are essentially treated the same. So it makes it very difficult to say this is going to be where we put our loading, our parking, have our prominent pedestrian access, and maybe if there's any ground floor activation or transparency standards, those would essentially apply to the entire site the way it's currently written, which makes it challenging for a site to be developed that has 3 or 4 frontages. So what this would do is create essentially a hierarchy of those frontages, and then you can determine what level of transparency is needed, what type of activation, if any, is needed, where you can treat those other frontages so you can put your non-predominant pedestrian entries or your operations for loading and trash and things like that. But I don't know, Kevin, if there's any technical elements you want to clarify on that item.
I think you've done a really good job. It's precisely that, right? It's like a relief valve, especially when frontages are often treated the same. Looking at the hierarchy and realizing that with floor plates or how projects come forward, that back of house functions got to be located somewhere. And so really through that hierarchy of frontages, offering them a relief valve of where makes best sense for design to locate those back of house functions. And then on that last frontage, it provides some flexibility on maybe some standards that don't currently exist, which would pose a challenge for them to locate those back house functions. And then also, I want to stress, and this is important as well, is just because there may be that relief valve on locating back of house functions for these multiple frontage conditions, that does not mean that we're not expecting a good outcome on that frontage that's quote unquote treated as the last frontage or lowest in the hierarchy. We are still wanting some measure of good design and maybe some amenitization and some pedestrian orientation design elements along that frontage. We just want to be able to offer the flexibility to have development locate what they need to on their site, offer a relief valve for some of the things that pose challenges for them, but it's a push and pull, still wanting some good design elements and design site elements and outcomes from that process.
Another just point of clarification in the chat looks like John Kinley on the zoning side, city staff said to clarify that eaves for principal structures can encroach up to 3 feet in the setbacks. And so does that also then, John, pertain to the ADU as well, or?
not gonna apply to an ADU since an ADU can be up to 3 feet from the property line.
Okay.
And then so then if you allowed it to encroach, then basically you had two ADUs on two separate lots, their roofs would be touching. So I don't think it applies to accessory structures. I think it only applies to principal structures.
So that everything there and then has to be within that setback
Right.
line. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. And we had a question about a pending House bill at the state legislature. If it passes, are there thoughts on timing of amendments to the UDO, what that would look like? Not yet. I think we would have to, wait to see what gets, through, if anything out of that proposed legislation. Then also if they set some level of an effective date. I haven't seen an effective date, so I'm not sure if that's going to be effective immediately, but that will certainly impact any timing. But we are watching that closely, and there will be amendments that we would file, and they may get filed outside the normal timeline of what we're trying to do once every 6 months or so on these maintenance amendments. That may be one that's filed outside of that timeline if we've got to meet certain effective dates, or have to do things that are impacted immediately upon passage of that potential piece of legislation. So we're watching it, and we'll keep everybody updated on what that may look like if and when it does pass in some form. All right. Any other questions? Looks like it may give some folks some time back during their lunch hour. But again, we have another one of these coming up on May 13th from 6 to 7. So if you, like Mariah mentioned, you want to join just to hear again, you're all welcome to, but please also share with any colleagues or other folks that that may be interested that weren't able to join us today. Again, that will be through the same channels here on Zoom, 6 to 7. And then, look forward to the public hearing on the 19th, and any potential changes that get made following that, we will certainly share out and keep the website updated with what those changes are, and we'll add to the summary document. But take a look at the summary document as well. Like we had mentioned, this is something we're trying to incorporate just to give folks a little bit easier way to navigate what the changes are and see some things that they may be more focused on. So if there's some things we can improve or modify with that document, please let us know. We're just trying to make this as digestible and easy to navigate as we can. But again, appreciate everybody's time today. It looks like we've got one. The principal structure overhang rule should not apply to ADU structures. Yep, so they're correct. So that, like I said, I appreciate everybody's time. And as this thing continues to progress, we'll keep everybody updated, keep the website up to date, and look forward to working with everybody moving forward. So if anybody has anything else, let us know. Even outside of this general meeting, you can always reach out to staff with questions via email or phone call. But again, always appreciate everybody's input, and thank you for your time today.